All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another of the Builds 2022 refreshes. So today we're talking about Oberon, and Oberon is in a pretty sad state as of current, but he does work. He does function technically, and he's okay for a few things. You can use him for like soloing Eidolons in a somewhat comfortable way, for example. He can handle Steel Path content in most cases, and he's okay. But I do want to focus on what the problems with Oberon are in this video, as they're all very fixable and have literally been fixed on other Warframes, so I don't see any reason why he should be the exception to that. For this is the build that we are running with. So, thing about Oberon is you need survivability, and in order to attain that survivability, you are going to be using renewal. For that, in order to have enough survivability for the Steel Path, you are going to absolutely need quite a bit of strength, so that is some really, really good healing, and that you're going to get plenty of armor from it to help yourself survive. With that, this build focuses on power strength. We are using the new Molt Augmented, which after 250 kills, which is not terribly difficult to get, especially on the Steel Path, is going to give us 60% power strength for a total of 294% power strength before growing power. Obviously, with growing power, we're going to be at like 319%, and that is almost enough. And what I mean by almost enough is that the base armor strip, for some reason, on Reckoning, is 30%. So, in order to get that max armor strip, which is what you kind of need to be relevant, Oberon would need 333% power strength. That is, obviously, kind of completely ridiculous, especially for an ability that costs 100 energy. It is honestly baffling to me that this is not a 50% base number, so that you would only need 200% strength in order to get that full armor strip. And on top of that, this ability has an itty-bitty range, especially for an alt, at 15 meters. And it doesn't even do the armor strip, which is the good part, without hollowed ground being under the enemies you hit with it. Basically meaning that this ability is not good and not worth building around. I think it's kind of outrageous that this ability hasn't just at least been number buffed in terms of the armor reduction number and its radius, because it is so lackluster. Speaking of things that are lackluster, renewal. Renewal needs you to stand on hollowed ground in order to activate its armor buff, which is not a big deal. But renewal offers less survivability than Wisp does at hilariously more energy. You not only have the drain a second of like our baseline here, but you also have energy per target, which means that if you have a full squad, you are being punished for them being near you and you healing them, which, considering that the healing that Oberon provides is not even very good, I think is kind of outrageous. On top of that, Hollowed Ground is kind of an okay ability. It puts radiation on enemies and can kind of distract them and also makes you status immune. But the range for this ability is also 15 meters, which is tiny, absolutely tiny for a frame that needs to build an absolutely outrageous amount of strength just to be playable at higher levels. So, that's also quite unfortunate. And then, of course, we have Smite. Now, Smite does do percentage damage, and that percentage damage is in some very niche cases useful, but without a compelling and consistent armor strip, that percentage damage almost never gets to like actually shine through outside of very niche cases like, I guess, Steel Path Kelidithame. If you build up all the strength to do that full armor strip and so on and so forth in order to make that happen and make it be good. Or alternatively, you could build for Smite Infusion, which will add a ton of radiation damage to your attacks. But if you just wanted to be a tanky Warframe that does a lot of damage, there's plenty of Warframes that do that with no augments, and it's also way, way better. Looking at Nezha. So yeah, Oberon has some stuff. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, Hallowed Ground gives status immunity while you are standing on it, but that doesn't like stick to you or anything with renewal. So Oberon is a Warframe that still wants to use primed sure-footed just so you don't have to roll out the green carpet everywhere you walk just to make it so your explosives don't bounce you around the room. Which is also kind of outrageous for a tank Warframe in this day and age, considering he doesn't really have any compelling DPS abilities for you to use. So all in all, it's just a very frustrating experience. Now, I have chosen not to invest in Umbral Forma in Oberon because it is not worth it. But it is worth noting, if you were to Forma him with an Umbral Forma, you could put Power Drift into this Exilus slot, and at that point, while you were under the effect of growing power and have a fully stacked Molt Augmented, you would get the absolutely mythical 100% armor strip from Oberon. Is that good? Sort of. But is it worth it? No. No, not at all. Not even a little bit. You should instead go back to the Nyx video and then just do that instead. Because not only is it way better, it's also just like, it's way better and also more convenient, and it has less requirements, and it's available earlier, and so on and so forth. We're using multiple. How many is this? 6 maxed out. 4 of them are prime mods. That is hundreds of thousands of endo of investment that Nyx doesn't need in order to do the thing that she does very well. So yeah, it's just overall. Also, you have to use Molt Augmented, which is 21 arcanes. So all of that business. And not to mention, Hunter Adrenaline is in here just to make it so that the energy economy is at least okay-ish. And that is relying on enemies shooting you to make your energy economy okay-ish, because just going by your, just efficiency really doesn't work, because you're going to tank your duration and everything else. And it's just going to be a nightmare with all of the strength and other survivability you need, because the built-in survivability of Oberon isn't enough. So, all in all, Oberon is a Warframe that is frustrating because he has not been buffed, and how to farm Oberon has been considerably nerfed as they moved him into Railjack in basically the fucking long-lost Boondocks, where most players are not going to get a regular Oberon and are much more likely to randomly get a Prime Oberon than to ever see the regular one, making him not very new player friendly either. So yeah, all in all, he is a playable Warframe that you can use, but probably shouldn't, unfortunately. And that's not to say he does nothing, because, there's stuff to do here. You can do some things, but mostly you should probably just use a good gun and then, hope that he is going to live through most things. That's pretty much the long and the short here, is that you should use a really good weapon, and then sometimes that's also not going to be enough, because these enemies do more damage than the Steel Path enemies, because they're level 190 and their damage is scaled higher than the Steel Path enemies is. So sometimes, even if you go out of your way to set up all of his defensive stuff, it still isn't enough, unfortunately. I did not grab energy, which he desperately needs. So yeah, it's just a whole thing. So you can just play it like you're a much squishier Warframe. Oh, and then still die, because the damage is just that high for Oberon to die instantly. Oh man. Okay, give me a second. Give me a second. I have to do the test cal try hard shit on a Warframe that has abilities that are solely for surviving. Yeah, that's definitely Oberon and not the Kuva Brahma and doing fucking slide dodges that got us through that one. Oh man. Yeah, that's Oberon. Enjoy the Steel Path run. What a sorry state this frame's in. Hello, everyone. This is not an on-stream run, but I figured I might as well talk during it, because I decided I'm gonna leave one of my takes in for the main thing, and I kind of want to talk about it. And that is to say that, in the Simulacrum, he doesn't survive against the level 190s, basically at all, because they have enough burst damage just to get through him, even with adaptation building up and so on and so forth. And it's just really sad, considering what other tank Warframes can output, especially with even low investment builds, and even what DPS frames can get out of what they're doing. like Zephyr, for example. It's just a really unfortunate state that we find ourselves with, where it's just not super workable. Luckily here I can just like use the Brahma and or use the Latum that I have equipped. There's that there's that knockdown, or the blowback, because I'm not on my grass that I was talking about. Yeah, it's just it's unfortunate to be Oberon right now. It is just it's just rough styles. Like, can he do like Eidolons and stuff still, and his grass is like helpful, and you could run like Safeguard, or I believe that's what it's called, his augment for his 3. Could you run that and like help new players learn Eidolons? Sure, but I think in like the current state of Warframe, I don't know that people should really be doing more than like the 10 Eidolons you need in order to get your waybounds unlocked. Like, obviously you can, but the runs themselves are not super lucrative, and with like the time ring restrictions and everything else that's on those, it's not fantastic. Also, a thing that is worth noting on the Steel Path run, obviously before I even do like the recording for the like builds portion of the video, I usually do some testing. It is worth noting that with this build, if you do not constantly keep grass up, not only do you bounce yourself around, but also if the enemies proc like an okay amount of slash on you, like 2 or 3 procs, you will actually just start to die from that, even with all of your healing. And that's even if you have like your stacks built all the way up, which once I build all my stacks to 250, I am going to re-up all of my business here. That will just be better, which we're almost to. We're like not very far into the run, like 2.5 minutes in. That's about normal for getting the 250 kills ish, especially if you're using a good gun. And then now we're at 250, so we're going to Madurai, give ourselves that new regen with the new much higher power strength, and that'll be helpful for even if we make some mistakes and those slash procs, like, you know, get through if we're not on our grass for whatever reason. We'll have a little bit more survivability with that constant healing. But yeah, it's real tough, because what Oberon really needs is, if they're not going to do a full rework, which I would never expect, I would never expect a full rework, because for me personally, I think that he should have his 2 and 3 combined into a single ability, and his 4 move down to a 3 and still also buffed, and then get like a brand new 4th ability, of which there's infinite possibilities of what could be good there. For me personally, the dream is to have him be like a giant tower shield. But yeah, it's an unfortunate situation with Oberon, because it's unlikely that he's gonna get buffed, especially because, like, one would have to assume that like he's not getting a deluxe or anything like that anytime soon. Obviously that could happen, but with the deluxes we have on the horizon with like Baruch and Protea, like, I don't think there's any changes in the near future for Oberon, even though just a couple buffs would probably be pretty simple, right? Like, if you're just talking about like looking at some numbers and being like, those numbers should be double what they are, or those numbers should like be increased by 5, I would hope that those types of changes are more accessible for DE to do, but it's obviously hard to say. Oh good, it's violence. Here to turn off my powers. Okay, turned off my ability to transference back into the frame. And turned off my powers. Turned off my healing, so on and so forth. Violence, obviously the absolute worst thing that you can get at any time on any frame that actually needs its powers. Obviously, if you're a Naros doesn't really care. Which is another thing that is actually kind of relevant to Oberon, is that, like, if we're looking at something like Inaros is obviously, you don't get like the constant healing, but Inaros has an absolute ton of healing, and Inaros is just generally very survivable, which obviously you're going to see in like some upcoming videos. I'll be doing the Inaros video, of course. And Inaros is even in a position where he's not nearly as good as he once was. So whenever it's the comparison to him for Oberon, it becomes really tough. Because if you look back at some of the build refreshes, like you're looking at Neja, and like playing as Neja is like a completely different experience, right? Like he is a tank and he's got like these super relevant damage buffs and he's status immune and like he's also super fast from his passive. Like Oberon doesn't even really have a passive. His passive is like cat and dog related, where I think he revives them faster or something. I don't remember the exact stat line. It's super completely useless. Like it doesn't matter at all. And it's an unfortunate thing. The Latem's great though, huh? How about that? You guys should go watch the Latem video. This weapon slaps ass. This is the exact same build from that video. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's wonderful. All right. Anyway, I'm probably just gonna shut up for the rest of the video. There's not really a lot more to say about Oberon. He's Oberon. He's doing stuff. He should really get buffed. At least some simple buffs would really make his life a lot easier. What a world. We would have never expected 4 years ago that Oberon was going to be below Nyx, right? Like, I would definitely say that Nyx is better than Oberon in, like, the current state of the game. And it's crazy. It'd be crazy if you told me 4 years ago, hey, Nyx is better than Oberon. Like, that just wasn't the case back then. Back in ye olden times. Back in the days of yore, if you will. If you really want to get fancy with it. Anyway, I'm gonna for real shut up now. Enjoy the rest of the run. Hopefully you guys liked the video. Sorry if you really like Oberon. I hope that he gets the buffs that he very much deserves to have, so that he is better for you. If you are an Oberon enjoyer, you are average Oberon enjoyer.
Extraction is ready. running out of time. Consider extraction. We will all share in this bounty. Hold out as long as you can. Critical life support levels. Extraction is your best option.
A valuable lesson.